very end of Chav Gimel Amid Beis. Today's daf is a brilliant ha'ara. What the Gemara does is it establishes a couple shilas in the beginning of the daf, just a couple, like it does that oftentimes. The mamash at the end of the daf, it puts it all together like one complex shaila. Very, very. Go through each one. It works. Kisalek Rav Kahana, when Rav Kahana went up to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, Ashkechinu lebnei Rav Chia diyasikamer. He found the sons of Rav Chia were sitting and learning, and they said the following question: Isarin shecholku. You have an isarin, a mincha. So a mincha is an isarin. You split it in half. V'henichu bebisa, and they placed it in the kli sharis. Now the rule is generally that when items are in one kli, they're considered one item. Like when it comes to laws of challah, you put them in one kli, and then you could separate challah from all of them. But, and by the way, what that means is, if someone who's tameh touches one loaf, one section of the isaron, the tumah goes to the other one. That's the general concept. What their shaila is, what if they're not touching? Meaning, if the two items are touching each other in the kli, they're for sure considered one gush, where if you touch one, the tumah spreads to the other. That's pashit. The shaila is over here, there's airspace in between. Do we say that the kli unites it to make it one item even when they're not touching? At kol zman they're in a kli, they're one item, and let's say think of A and B. If a tameh person touches A, B is automatically tameh. Or no, they're only considered one if they're touching. Touching in a kli. That's the point. So hinichu bebisa v'nogots v'yoyim be'echa mehem. Mahu, what's the halacha? Kitnan, this concept that we have in the Mishnayos in Chagiga, that kli mitzaref masha b'teichel lekodesh, that when it comes to karbanis and comes to kudshim, everything in the kli is considered one regarding the laws of tum and tahara. Hani mihechi denogi badadi, perhaps that's only when they're touching. Avol heicha deloy nogi badadi, but if they're not touching loy, oidil maloishana. So you have this concept. You take the Isar and split up to A and B. They're not touching each other, and someone whose tummy touches A is B automatically tummy because it's in the same kli. So Amar Lu Iu, he responded to them, Ki tnan kli mechaber, kli mitzaref, ki tnan kli mechaber, kli mitzaref tnan. It doesn't say mechaber. Mechaber, which means to join, implies that they're touching. It doesn't say mechaber. It says mitzaref. Mitzaref means everything inside. Meaning, he's paskening that as long as they're in one kli, for the laws of Tumah Tahara, they're one unit. So if you have A and B in one kli, and someone who's tummy touches A, B is tummy as well. That's halacha number one. Let's go. Question number two. Hoishit echad mibineihem mahu. Interesting shayla. I have a mincha. Okay, the mincha is, let's say, 5 pounds. The isaron, let's say it's 5 pounds. I split it up into 2, 2.5, 2.5. It's considered one. What if in between the 2.5 pounds and the 2.5 pounds, you take some of your own mincha? I don't know why. You put a pound in there. Now it's in between. And then someone who's tameh touches that. So here's the shaila. Do you say, well, yeah, they're all touching, they're all connected, they're all in one kli. You just told me all in one kli. Or perhaps the kli only unites items that should be there. Your pound of dough or whatever should not be here. So perhaps because it's not meant to be here, it's not united together. So that's the shaila. He says, does that connect the first two pieces? That the laws of Tumah. Do we say that everything in the kli is united or no? Your item has no shaykhs to ours. It shouldn't be there. And therefore, if someone who's tameh touches your item, it will not go to my items because even though they're in the same kli, they're not meant to be in the same kli. That's shaila number two. If it's meant to be there, it's mitzaref. If it's not meant to be there, it's not mitzaref. In other words, if someone who's tameh touches B, your section that you added in that should not be there, it does not unite A and C. Good. Halacha number 3. Now these two halachic shailas, the Gemara is going to put it together in Amin Beis like this Geshmak shaila putting it together. Shaila number 3 is Hoyshet Tvil Yomis Etzba B'nei Mahu. Back to my case. I have A and B in the kli. Again, I take an isaron of a mincha, I split up into A and B, they're in the kli, they're not touching each other, but we said before they're one for the laws of Tumah Tahara. What if someone who's tameh puts his fingers in between, in the airspace in between? Is it tameh? Meaning, in other words, do we look at it as if A and B are halachically connected, but they're not actually connected? Or no, we look at it as like the airspace, think of it like it's like halachically filled in. So when the tameh person puts his hands in between A and B, perhaps it's as if he's touching. You understand? Meaning A and B, that we say they're united, does that mean that we look at the airspace in between as if it's shut? And therefore, if someone who's tamei puts his fingers in the airspace between A and B, it's as if it's akin to touching. So why Tfil Yom? I think the Rishonim talk about why Tfil Yom because if it was any other tuma, it would affect the kli as well. The Tfil Yom is able to metame the item and not the food and not the item. The point is, the shaila is if he puts it in between the airspace of A and B is the tamei. So Amar Lehu, he said, Ein loch damer shemetame ma'avir lekli cheres bilvad. The only airspace that is tamei, meaning the only thing that's able to metame airspace is a kli cheres. Right, with a kli cheres, if sheretz hangs in between, it's in the airspace it's tamei. We don't find any other time that the airspace is able to be tamei, so therefore putting my fingers in between is not going to transmit tamei. Good. Those were shilas, the first three shilas. On to another shilah. Hadar iu by minayu. Then he asked them the following shilah. Ma'u likmaitz mizeh l'zeh. Interesting. Again, you have a mincha. You split it into two. You put them in the same kli together, not touching. So we said, you just established, they're considered one regarding the laws of Tumatara, they're one. The question is that a din deraisa or a din derabbanan? Meaning, is that a chumrah or is that me'ikra din? I'll tell you the nafkamina. Can I do kmitza on one half and it works for the other half? If you're telling me the laws of Tumatara say that they're one mamish deraisa, then I could do kmitza on one half and it works for the other half. If you say no, it's not really that they're one deraisa. It's derabbanon, we're machmer for the laws of Tumah, that it's disqualified. But it wouldn't work for kmitza. So in other words, can I do kmitza on two halves that are not touching and have it work? Or no, perhaps they have to be touching. Says the Gemara, can I do kmitza on one half and work for the other half that's not touching? Tzirif deraisa or derabbanon. Is this concept a biblical concept and therefore it works or no? This is a chumrah for the laws of Tumah. So, Amrulai, Zulay Shemanu. So they said, well, we never heard the exact case, but Kiyotzavei Shemanu. But we heard something similar. What did we hear? Titanan. So I'll sort of say this outside. The Mishnah had said, it's weird, have a minute. The Mishnah had said that if I have two minchas that fall into a bowl together and they're touching, as long as I could do a kmitza on my end and you could do a kmitza on your end, it works. For some reason, think of it like, picture in your mind, you have the two flowers that fall in together. Think of mine as like lighter and yours darker, just from an imagery perspective. In the center, they're like mixed, like this. For some reason, the Gemara thought that the part that you're going to do in kmitza on is not touching the middle. So it's like middle mixed, and then there's airspace, and then there's the rest. For some reason, the Gemara assumes that that's the way it looks, just practically. Therefore, when you're doing kmitza on all of your flour, even the part that's not touching it. For some reason, the Gemara assumes that that's how it fell. And the Gemara's response is, no, it's all connected. In the center, it's touching, and the out, it's not touching. So how is that possible? Think of it like this, literally like my hands. My fingers are touching, and my wrists are not. So I'm doing kmitza by my wrist, but it's all one gush. For some reason, the Gemara just assumed that there's airspace in between the part that you're doing kmitza and the rest of it. Oh, you see, you could do kmitza on parts that are not touching, and the Gemara... Who says that that's the case? It's a strange. I don't know why the hafim is. So let's just see inside. Kiyotzavei Shemanu ditanan. Shnei menachos shleim kusav v'sar bezu bezu. Im yachal likmas bezu v'nei yatzos v'nei yatzos meksheres. V'im lav psules. Ki yachal likmas meksheres. Amai hachtamarav hachlei naga. Are we not referring to a case where you're doing kmitza on parts that are not touching the rest? And the Gemara says, Amar Rava dilma begushin amuchalokin osin kemisarik. Perhaps they are touching, and it looks like a comb. So you have the teeth over here, and you have the rest of it, but it's all one unit. I don't know why you assume that it's not touching. So we're still looking for, can you do kmitza on two items, two piles in a kli that they're not touching? So Gemara says, I'll bring a raya. The raya is as follows. My havelah, so what's the conclusion? So Amar Rava, Tashema, Titania, V'herim mimenu min ha'mechuber, shlo yava isarim b'shnei kelim v'yikmites. Okay, so this is the raya. The Mishnah says, you are not able to bring two kalim, meaning, our discussion is two halves in one kli. Let's say I just say like this, it's just easier. I'd rather bring two small bowls. I have two small bowls. I bring two small bowls instead of one big one. So I'll bring half here and a half here. I'll do a little half a kmitza here, half a kmitza here. That doesn't work. Or even a full kmitza, that does not work. If they're not touching and in separate kalim, that doesn't work. That's what the Mishnah says. But let's deduce from that. Dafka, when they're in two kalim, it's a problem. But if they're not in two kalim, but they're in one kli, similar to two kalim. What's one kli similar to two kalim? Our discussion. Two piles in one kli. Then it does work. Says the Gemara, comments. Again, so the raya is, the Brisa says, you are not able to do kamitza in two kalim. Pashtus, the case is two separate bowls. The implication is that's a problem because they're two separate bowls. But if they're in one bowl and not touching, it's fine. Good. Good. So the Gemara says no. Perhaps that's not, again, you have the case of the Brisa, which is A, and then you could deduce something B. The Brisa's case is two kalim, no good. What is good, question mark, we assume we're talking about our case. Two piles not touching in one kli. The Gemara says no. Perhaps that's not what the case is at all. Neither case. I'm just going to say it outside. Perhaps the case of two bowls is not what you think, two separate bowls, but rather, it's hard to imagine this, but imagine a multi-layered bowl. Imagine a bowl that has the top, so you fill it up, and then when you fill it up enough, the flour like sort of goes down, and it fills up like a second, like a two-tiered bowl. That's the problem. Meaning, what we're talking about is a multi-tiered bowl because they're really not connected. They're connected in that they're metal, but they're not really one unit. But what is okay, not our case of two in one bowl not touching, but rather, you know those plates sometimes where they have like a little bit of a divider, a little bit like to separate the chicken on one side, like the styrofoam, so they're touching, but there's technically a divider in between. That's when it's okay. Meaning, we know the Brisa has a case which is a problem, and then you could deduce a case which is okay. We assume the case that's a problem is two separate bowls, and the case that's okay is our case. One bowl, two items not touching. The answer is neither are what you're talking about. The case the Brisa says is not okay is this two-tiered bowl system where they're mamish not mechubar really at all. Where you can mamish have you could have meatballs on the bottom and pasta on top because they're really not really connected. That's when it's not okay. And what is okay, where you have one bowl with a little bit of a trough with a little bit of a divider, like a semi-divider, and the food is touching on top of said divider. So they're actually touching each other. That's when it's okay. Meaning you might think that because there's a divider, it's technically two kalim, and it's a problem to do kamitza. No, kamash v'lan, all the flour is touching each other, it's fine. But in our case, which is two items in one bowl not touching, we haven't addressed that, and that could be an issue. So the Gemara just says, Amrle Abaya, Dilma, Shnei Kalim, Hechidami. Perhaps the case of the Brisa, where it says two vessels is a problem, is going kfiza bekava. It's like a kfiza, which is inside a kav. So it's this two-layered system of a bowl. Davagav da'arivim eloi, even though on top of it you might have some mixture of food, kivan the mifsek mechitzasa, the kfitza mitata, since there's mamish a wall separating them, it goes around. So there's mamish a two-tiered system. So separating them, you have to know exactly how it looks. Then you have a Koran Gemara? Do you have a Koran Gemara? So afterwards you check that he might, or Steinsaltz might actually make a picture. So loy, that's a problem. But kli echa, what is okay? So kli echa dumya de shnei kelim hechidami. And what is okay is like a trough of chickens, where you have a little low barrier to separate the liquid from the solids, but the food is mamish touching each other. And therefore, even though there is a small barrier, they are practically touching each other. That's why it's okay. But our discussion, that they're not touching at all, that we're still not sure, and the Gemara does not answer the question. Okay, on to the next one. We had before, if you're in a kli, and you have two separate ones, they're considered one for the laws of Tumah Tahara. Meaning that if someone who's Tameh, so you have A and B in the bowl, if someone who's Tameh touches A, B is Tameh as well. Here's the Shaila. I'll just say it outside, we'll see it inside. You have A and B in the bowl. I already know that. If someone's Tameh touches A, B is Tameh. B is connected through liquid to see outside of the bowl. Now here's the point. So liquids usually connect for the laws of Tumah Tahara. Generally, if I have two items, like I have two meatballs that are connected by sauce, you touch A, B is Tameh, because the liquid connects. Here's the Shiloh though. A and B are in the bowl. I touch A, B is Tameh. B is then connected to C outside of the bowl through liquid. So do we say, well, think about it. A is tame, that makes B tame. Once B is tame, then it goes to C. Or perhaps no. Perhaps because B itself was not touched by the source of the tumah, it does not transmit tumah outside of the kli through the liquid. In the shiloh. So that's the shiloh of the Gemara. So you have A and B in the bowl. A is tame, touches A is tame, B becomes tame, and the question is, does that tumah that is sort of receives then go through the liquid outside of the bowl to C? The Gemara is a shaila. Boy Rav Yirmiyah tzirif kli v'chiber mayim mahu mitnan kitnan kli mitzav masher b'tech lekadosh hanimil degavoy av debroi. Do we say this whole concept of A spreading tumah to B because it's in one kli, it stops there? It doesn't go outside of the tumah, outside of the kli. Oy dilma kivin the mechaber. Or perhaps no. A is connected to B and B is connected to C, so they're all tameh. Now the Gemara says, what about the reverse case? Instead of A becoming tummy spreading to B and then spreading to C, what if C becomes tummy outside of the bowl? Does the liquid then go to B and then go from B to A because it's in one bowl? It's literally the same, but instead of ABC, it's CBA. The Gemara says, Mahu. What about the reverse case? Do we say that, again, in this case, someone who's tummy touches C outside of the bowl. C is now tummy. There's a liquid stream connecting C to B. So now B l'chor is tummy. But now B should be mitama A because they're in one bowl. Or do you say no? This whole concept of a one bowl spreading the tumah is only when the source of the tumah is inside the bowl or touched inside the bowl, not when it's outside the bowl. And teku. Not sure. That's the end of that one. All right. Interesting shaila again. Let's keep going. By Rava, isaran shecholku v'nitma echa mehem v'henichu bebisa. Okay. Till now we've been dealing with a case. We have A and B in the bowl. They're not touching each other. A becomes tameh in the bowl. B it spreads. What about the opposite case? What about this case? I take A, which is already tameh. B is in the bowl. Okay. I take A, which is already tameh, and I place it in the bowl. The halach is it doesn't spread to B. Why? The concept of A and B in one bowl having one unit for tumah is only when something in the bowl becomes tameh, it spreads. But if it was already tameh before it was placed in the bowl, it does not go. So again, A and B are in the bowl, both tahar. I touch A, I'm tameh, it goes from A to B. But if B is in the bowl, I'm tameh, I touch A outside of the bowl, so A is already tameh, then I place it in, it does not spread. Here's the shaila. This very case, A is already tameh, I place it in the bowl. Then I touch A again. So here's the shaila. Do we say, once something's tameh, it's tameh? Or do you say, no, you could sort of get tameh twice. That first tumah made it tameh outside of the bowl. The second tumah that I'm touching it inside the bowl accomplishes enough to spread. It's like, like if in Mario, if you're adding a mushroom already and you're already big, the mushroom goes to the top, like you save it, like it accomplishes something. It's a bad example. Anyway, the point is, so if you have over here, the shaila is, if it was already tameh outside of the bowl, and then I place it in the bowl, so it does not spread, and then I touch it. So the question is, did my touching it the second time do anything? Do we say it's already tameh? So no. Or do you say no? Every time you touch it when you're tameh, it becomes like a little more tameh for halachic purposes. Sort of we scan. Was there halachic change? Was there halachic change? Generally not. But in this case, there would be. Because the tumah happened inside the bowl the second time, it now spreads to B. That's the shaila. So the Gemara says, "By Rava, isaron shechalk v'nitma echa may have anichu b'bisa v'chazer tfil yoyim v'naga b'isay tameh." And by the way, notice over here, I just want to make this point clear. We've had cases throughout Shas where an item is tameh, like a lesser tumah, and then a bigger tumah fell on. That's a thing. Meaning, if someone who's tameh, let's say, carry, and then they touch a dead body, yeah, they get tameh because the second one is so much stronger. Over here, it's the same. We've also had, by the way, concepts in Shas of someone becoming tummy twice, bevasachas, like two tumas touching you at once. That's also a thing. Over here, it's different. Over here, it's one tumah, the same, not stronger, not at the same time, just the same regular tumah happening again. The question is, does the second time do anything? So you'll say, well, it's already tummy. What do I care? The answer, I'll tell you why I care. Because the second time it's happening in the bowl, so it would spread to be. Says the Gemara, do we say it's already satiated with tumah? Meaning, once your tummy, you're already tummy. You can't be tummy, like, you can't be more tummy. Or perhaps you could be more tummy. So the Gemara is going to bring rayas, and each raya is a problem. I'll tell you the problem with these rayas. I told you before, there are cases throughout Shas of lesser tumah and then stronger tumah. That's not what we're looking for. The Gemara is going to attempt to bring that, and the Gemara is going to say, that's not what we're looking for. I'm looking for the same tumah happening again. And the Gemara is then going to bring a raya of becoming tummy twice at the same time. And again, the Gemara is going to say, very nice, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this case. And I don't think the Gemara ever concludes. Amrei Abaya, mi amrin savali tuma. Is there such a thing that like once you're tummy, you can't be more tummy? V'otzanan. The Mishnah says like this: Sadin tummy. You have a sheet that became tummy. Go to the next page. Midras. Is that? I might be blocking someone. This morning I knew I had to be chazan, so I had to get here early. I know there's a garbage can, but it's garbage. Okay. All right, fine. Midras. So the laws of Midras is like this. If a zav lies down on something that is meant to be lying down, like a pillow or a couch, the couch becomes a very high level tumah. It's called midras. It's a very high level tumah. So you have a sheet that was like a blanket. Think of it a blanket, right, for your bed. A zav lays down on it. It's a very high level tumah. But then you decide, I don't want to use it as a blanket anymore. I want it as a curtain for my window. So you hang it up as a curtain for the window. Now, when you did that, it's no longer it doesn't have that purpose anymore. So that tumas midras goes away. It's akin to breaking a kli. But what is the status of that sheet? Says the Gemara, V'asu v'ila, and you made it into a curtain, tahar min midras. The tumas midras goes away, avol tamei mage midras. The Tanakama believes it's what's called tamei mage midras. Midras is a high level tumah. Anything that touches that is also tamei. So this sheet touched itself, so to speak. And therefore, while you hang it up as a curtain, it loses its status as midras, but it's not tahar, it's mage midras. Fine. But let's focus on Rav Yossi Shita. Rav Yossi says, I'm Rav Yossi, Beis midras nagabai. When was it touched by him? What do you mean? It touches itself? What are you talking about? That's another thing. It either is or it is not. Says Rav Yossi, Ela im nagabai hazav, tamei maga hazav. It's only tamei maga midras if it's touched by a zav. So Rav Yossi is basically saying, if you have this sheet, if it's midras, that depends on whether it was ever lied down. Is it magi midras, which is touching something that was midras? So Rav Yossi says, it depends. If a zav touched it, yes. If not, not. Okay. The Gemara understands that Rav Yossi means to say that if a zav touches it, it'll be magi midras, whenever that happens. Meaning, you could have a zav lying down on it, so it's midras, high level tumah, and let's say he's not touching the sheet directly, so he's lying on a pillow which is on the sheet, so it's midras. Then he touches it, now it's magid midras. Meaning Rav Yossi said the words, the Gemara is like taking it very, very specifically. If it was ever touched by a zav, it's magid midras. That implies whether it was touched by a zav when it's tahar, and now it's tameh, or whether it was touched by a zav when it was already tameh, it's now more tameh. So this is an example. The Gemara, for some reason, takes it like super face value. You told me if it was ever touched by a zav, it's tameh. That means whether it was tahar and touched, or whether it was super tameh and touched. So you see that even so something is tameh, it could be more tameh. The Gemara is going to respond, no, that's not what he meant. It's like if I tell you, like, if you ever go in a cemetery, it's you're tameh. Well, that means whether I walk in when I'm tahar, or whether I walk in and I'm already tameh, I'm now more tameh. I didn't really mean that. I didn't mean more tameh. I meant tahar to tumah. So the Gemara says, "Kinaga be'azav miya tameh, va'afilu l'bsayif amai lema savla tumah." Amar lei, "Ma'idai shimnaga be'azav lebasa midras, dilma mekame midras, David tumah chamuro tumah kala, avahocha eidvedi tumah kala loy." The Gemara says, no, maybe all Rav Yossi meant is like this: if you're tahar and you touch, the zav touches it, now it's now magid midras, and then if the zav lies down on it, it goes to a higher level tumah. But who said that there's such a thing as like the same level tumah second time? Well, that's not what Rav Yossi was talking about. Okay, Elam Seifa. The Gemara then attempts from the end of the Mishnah, the end of the Brisa. What does it say? Moder of Yosi b'shnei sadinim hamakufalim u'muchnachim zeh b'zeh v'yoshev zav alein she'el yoin tameh midras v'tachtin tameh midras u'mageh midras. Okay, you have like this. I'm a zav. So I'm lying down on a blanket, which is on top of a sheet. So what's the status of the sheet? Yeah. The sheet is midras, because I lie down on it, I put my weight on it, and it's touching the top sheet, which is, the top sheet is midras, the bottom sheet is midras. They're both midras, because I'm lying down, I'm putting my weight. Midras means I'm putting my weight on it. It becomes tameh. The top sheet, which is tameh, now touches the bottom sheet. So the bottom sheet, at the same time becoming midras, it's also mageh midras. Both at the same time. Okay. So you see, you could have multiple tumas, and the Gemara's response is, that's at the same time. At the same time, at one moment, the bottom sheet becomes midras and mageh midras at the same time, because it has the weight of the zav on it, midras, and it's touching the top sheet, which is already tameh, so mageh midras, happening at the same time. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about zeh achar zeh. The Gemara says hasam v'asachas hacha b'zeh achar zeh. Okay. So here until the end of the Amud, I think this is like a brilliant art. You just have to be able to picture this. It sort of takes what we did in the beginning of the daf and puts it together. In the beginning of the daf, the Gemara had said that the bowl combines it together for Tum and Tahara, but in the case I mentioned with Menachos' case, which is I take a mincha, I split it A and B, and then you take your mincha for whatever reason, putting it in my bowl. What's that about? It's not even supposed to be there. And then I'm tameh, I touch B, it doesn't spread tumah to A and C. Why not? I thought it's in the same bowl. It's only when it's supposed to be there, not when it's not supposed to be there. Okay, here's the Gemara Shaila. I think it's a fascinating Shaila. It's brilliant. I have a mincha. I split it. Just get the letters down. I'm going to get the letters. A and B. I split it into two parts, A and B. I lose A. So I bring more from home. I bring C from home. Each one is, let's say, the entire mincha is supposed to be 3 pounds. So it's 1.5 pounds, 1.5 pounds. I lose A. Can't find it. I bring C from home. So I got B and C. Okay. Then I find A. Now they're all in a bowl together. So here the question is, what's the status of all three for the discussion that we had before? Now, it's not exactly like Menachos' case, which is he put his flour into my bowl, should not have been there. There's no reason for it to be there. Over here, it's a little different. While conceptually all parts of it should be there, however, I never intended to have these 3 sections, obviously. What I intended for was in stages. Originally, I thought I'd have A and B. Then I thought I have B and C. I never thought I'd have A, B, and C in one bowl, because now it's too much. It doesn't. I don't need it. It's unnecessary. So understand, I wanted A and B originally, and then when I lost A, I wanted B and C. I never wanted A and C to be in the bowl together, because it was never necessary. But at the end of the day, they're all part of my mincha. Do you understand? So it depends how you look at it. You could look at it as A, B, and C, mamish, they should not all be there like in Menachos' case. And therefore, the laws of Tumah should not spread. On the other hand, they all are part of my carbon. And I definitely wanted parts of them to be there. I wanted A and B, and at some point I wanted B and C. I just never wanted A and C in the bowl together. Because they were never, I only replaced A with C. I never wanted them together. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Isaron shecholku v'avad echon mehen, v'hifresh achar tachtav, v'nimtza rishon, hari shlushim menachem b'bisin. They're all 3, A, B, and C are in the bowl together. So nitma avud. If A becomes tameh, then avud v'rishon mitzdarfim. You know what's tameh? A and B. Not C, just A and B. Understand? A and B, there was a period in time where they were supposed to be in the bowl together. So if A becomes tameh, it goes to B, and then it stops. Because why wouldn't it go to C? Either in the same bowl. Because A and C were never meant to be in the bowl together. So this is Rava's take. And the opposite, nitma avud v'rishon mitzdarfim. Let's say C becomes tameh. So then C and B are tameh, not C and A. Because again, there was a period of time where A and B meant together. There's a period of time B and C were meant together. But A and C were never meant to be together. And therefore it's not mitzdarf. But nitma mufresh rishon mitzdarfin, oven mitzdarf. Nitma rishon shnei mitzdarfin. Now, by the way, Now, if let's say B becomes tameh, then they're both problematic. Because B was meant to be with both. Okay. That is the sheet of Rava. Abaye disagrees, and Abaye is like, I don't understand. It's all your carbon. So it's all one. We don't go to A and B and not C, or C and B. No. They're all your carbon. It's not the case that Menachos will put his carbon in my bowl. They're all your carbon. You have too much? Okay. Abaye disagrees. He says, you touch A, B and C are tameh. Touch B, A and C are tameh. You see, touch C, A and B are tameh. It's all the same. Abaye takes it very simply. My taima, kulu b'nei biksa dahadjaninu. They're all meant. They're all. What is it? It was Lashon. They're all residents of the same house. You understand? So that same shaila of Abaye and Rava also has negeh the next case. A, B, and C. Yeah. I take a kmitza off of one of them. What happens when you do kmitza? You could eat the remainder. What could I eat? So I take off A. I can eat the remainder of A, obviously, because A is fixed. But can I eat B and C? So, A you could eat with A and B. You take off C, you could eat C and B. You take off B, you can't eat either, by the way. Because I'll tell you why. B, if you take off B, the problem is it's meant to fix both, and now it's too much. And now you have a carbon, you have a mincha that's got too much flour. Because B is actually mechubar to both A and C. So it says the Gemara, "V'chein lina kmitza kometz mina oven shira v'rishay nechalim mufar shein nechal kometz mina mufar shira v'rishay nechalim oven nechal kometz mina rishay shnei nechalim." If let's say you take off B, then you can eat B because you fixed B, but you can't eat A or C because B is connected to both. So now basically you're trying to fix too much flour, and now you basically have a mincha that's got too much flour, and that's a problem. Abaye disagrees. The same cheshbon that Abaye says, no. They're all one. And therefore, if you take off A, you can't eat the rest. If you take off B, you can't eat the rest. You can see why? Because it's all one big carbon that's too much flour. Abaye says, afilu kametz me'achamehem shnei nechal. If you take off A, you can't eat B and C. You take off B, you can't eat A and C. You take off C, you can't eat A and B. Why? My time, kulu nami b'nei biksa dehadjaninu. They're all one home. I'll just end off with this interesting shaila. Let's go with any of the case. Let's go with Rava's middle case. I take off of B, so it's mechubar to both. So it's meant to fix A, it's meant to fix C as well. The problem is too much flour. So I can't eat A, I can't eat C. But I could eat B. Yeah, because that part was definitely, the kmitza was taken from that part. That part was fixed. Here's the interesting shaila. I don't understand why the Gemara thinks this way. Let's say a kmitza is 3 ounces. Okay? So when you take off 3 ounces from A, B, and C, I would just think, I don't know, it's fixing it. The Gemara understands that you take the 3 ounce kmitza and we sort of split it into 3 parts. 1 ounce of it is meant for A, 1 ounce is meant for B, and 1 ounce is meant for C. If that's how you look at it, here's the issue. Out of these 3, 1 of them is too much, 1 of them is excess, right? You don't need 3. 1 of them is too much. It's chulin. It's unnecessary. That means that part of the kmitza, like 2/3 of the kmitza is kaddish, but 1/3 of the kmitza corresponds to a section that's unnecessary. So shouldn't that ruin the kmitza itself? Meaning we're assuming it's a good kmitza, and it fixes that section. The question is, does it fix the other ones? But why? Why don't we look at it? For some reason, the Gemara looks at it is instead of the kmitza fixing what it could fix, the kmitza is like equally distributed in the eyes of Hashem. It's like, okay, the 3 ounce kmitza, 1 ounce for A, 1 ounce for B, and 1 ounce for C, which means within my hand, I have partially of the mincha that shouldn't be there. I don't know why for some reason the Gemara looks at it that way. So the Gemara says, Masker Rav Papa, V'shir didei minachalim. How are you able to eat the rest of, let's say you take it off B, you could at least eat B. Why? Because the kmitza helped B. Well, why? Ha'ika danka de koimitz leikarev. But there's a part of the kmitza that you can't burn. Meaning, if you look at each part of the kmitza as equally split, A, B, and C, there's a part in my hand that corresponds to a section that's too much. And Maskil Rav Yitzchak Bereder of Mesharshia, similarly, you're not even going to be able to burn it. Why? Because 1/3 of it is chulin. Because the Gemara assumes that when you take off the kmitza, we sort of look at it as 1/3 of it going one directional. So the Gemara says, Rav Ashi Omar, Koimitz bedaita de koyin tayil milsa. The das of the koyin, when you take the kamitza, has to do with the das of the koyin. The koyin kamitza, yisarin kamitz, and the koyin does the kamitza. He only has in mind the amount that is proper. Meaning, he doesn't have in mind that this 3 ounces should be 1 ounce for A, 1 ounce for B, 1 ounce for C. He doesn't think that way. He thinks that it should be for the proper amount. So definitely for B is fixed. He may not be able to fix A and C as well. I will stop here. I like today.